I think the game itself allows you to do the balance. It's us who aren't doing that balance. It's us who aren't making the friendship. Like I said, I get invited to a party back in the day. I would be so stacked by a party. I would say, hey, how's it going? I would just talk with the person. How's it, what's happening?
It is time once again for the main story quest, where the Trinity Bros give you their MMO opinion.
All right, we are now at our main story quest. And as you heard earlier during the daily, SirJahzeal mentioned, okay, that dungeon, the Burning Crew. First up, time for our Trinity Bro opinions, okay? Anyways, Dungeon Finders. Burning Crusade is an old game. Well, at least it was when it first came out a number of years ago. And it's not considered to be, it didn't have Dungeon Finders. And so it was asked, I think it might have been one of the panels, I thought, during the BlizzCon, but they're not going to have it. Not going to be there. And from a massively OP article, Blizzard's Brian Birmingham said, we don't feel like it would be important to include the group finder, especially not like the Dungeon Finder that with the auto teleport. We feel like that is antithetical to Classic, even though it's really cool to have that option in Modern WoW. We want to make sure there's a distinction between those offerings where if you want that social friction, you can find that in Classic. We definitely want to keep the broad, authentic character of Classic while still making targeted fixes for things that are real problems. So I started thinking about the fact that, wait a minute, what? Okay, I'm not sure if looking for group, looking for raid, Dungeon Finders is a good or bad thing. It's what I think separates the community. When you're playing Dark Age of Camelot back in the day, or even early Classic WoW, you had to make groups. You had to find raids, which is kind of if you're a solo person or in a small guild, it kind of makes it hard. But the idea is that's the whole point of a community, making a community, finding fellow people on your server who want to do the same thing and trying to group with them. And it built a sense of community, built a sense of friendships and finding friendships and even changing guilds if you find your guild isn't doing it. Dungeon Finders allows you to jump. Final Fantasy XIV requires you to finish the dungeons for the main story, which you can do by doing, LFR, LFQ, LFG, whatever it is, right? And I started thinking, well, this Dungeon Finder may have been the very thing that kind of ruined MMORPGs from being a true MMO anymore. It made it easier to play the game. It made it easier for everyone to play the game, but it kind of took away from things. So I just thought, what the heck? Let's ask this question. I'll toss it off to SirJahzeal first. What are your thoughts about Dungeon Finders? What has it added or taken away from the MMO experience?
I think it's done both, honestly. For the casual player, having it helps immensely. It does save time, and it's just super convenient. Especially in modern World of Warcraft, where there's just so much out there to do, that everyone's just strong, kind of thin, really. Although it's picked up recently with the uptick in subscriptions, but I don't think it's needed at all in Classic or the Burning Crusade or even Wrath of the Lich King, honestly. If that ever, well, of course they're going to do Wrath of the Lich King. I would say in Burning Crusade, for one thing, I remember that there are several dungeons that the dungeons tended to be closer together for one, so travel was easier to get to them in Burning Crusade. And I just, man, he was right. I miss that back when it mattered, and people mattered. People were real, behind that avatar. There was a real person. People treated each other well. Generally, I will say, because someone's going to say, well, I remember a lot of bad people in there. Well, yeah, of course. But generally, running through those dungeons and those raids and even questing during that time period, I've talked about it before. I made friendships that I still have to this day, all these years later, because you were kind of, in a way, forced to, unless you didn't want to do dungeons and raids, um, you were kind of forced to be social and to, seek out players, and you would have a white list of people that, hey, if this person's on, this healer's on, this tank's on, this DPS is on, they're going to be who I want to call. They're going to be the first one I'm going to call on, and if they're not, then we'll get some random, and then hopefully that turns out to be a positive relationship as well. And you also had your blacklist, like I was mentioning earlier, that would be people that you're like, oh, I don't really want to play with that person again for whatever reason. But it really, it was a different game, and I enjoy that part of it. And I respect their moving forward and not including it for that, because it'll be great to go back to that time and maybe make some new friendships out of it. And um, it does save time, and I got to be honest with that. And being someone that has more time, it's not that big a deal to me. But for my friends that are my age group, especially that have children and spouses and um, you know work, well, for the states that are actually allowed to go back to work, unlike mine, um, it you don't have a whole lot of time. You don't have, back when the game first came out and most of us were still in college or whatever and had fair bit more time to game. And a lot of the people I play with were even still in high school, believe it or not. Um, and they just naturally had more time than they do now. So, if you feel like that is just not going to work out for you, then just Modern World of Warcraft. And luckily, they've rolled it all into one package at your $15 or whatever, depending on how many months ahead that you pay for the game. Will include Classic and Burning Crusade and the modern version, Shadowlands. So, if you find that you don't have the time to sit around and look for someone and then have to actually travel to the dungeon, then that may not be for you. Luckily, you can go to the modern World of Warcraft and you can go to those Burning Crusade dungeons and do them with LFG and excuse me, and get instantly transported there, and that'll be more your style. So
Yeah, that's a that's a thing. I mean, it's like you did waste time, not waste time, but you spent time looking for a group. You spent time, like just hanging around waiting for it to happen. And I know when Dungeon Fighters first came out, people were like, "Oh, great, perfect. I don't have to wait so long." But then again, waiting was part of the, I don't know, the bug, the feature. Sabato says, got to say a couple of MMOs where you actually needed to go entrance dungeon, which you wanted to do, or were stuck that could not advance alone. You meet people who were stuck as well, or higher level players who want to help out. That feeling, I never forgot that. And you had to interact with them. Sometimes even made best friends online like that. Hard to imagine that to happen with dungeon finders. It does not matter who they are. Probably not even talk during the whole dungeon, and there is no connection to these players either. Yep. Even when you go on and you say that, hey, it's my first time doing this, they might say hi, I'll help you, but no, just run along, we'll do it, okay?
It's so easy to kick you out and find someone. That's why even when it is my first time, I never say it, because I know what's going to happen. They're going to kick me out, and they're just instantly going to get another DPS.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, Solomon, what are your thoughts about Dungeon Finders? Should we, I'm not sure. I mean, I know they have them in other games too, but what are your thoughts about them?
Oh man, I don't know. Is it bad? I can't even remember. Like I understand how the system works, But it's been so long since I actually played anything with a dungeon in it because Black Desert Online doesn't have dungeons in the game. Um, well, that being said, I mean, there's no teleportation or anything that lets you help find a group. So basically, in one of the most hardcore sandbox MMORPGs in the market right now, second to probably only EVE Online, maybe. Um, everything that you do in the game, you have to kind of do on your own. Um, you have to use the world chat or looking for group chat and see if you want to group up with people. There's no teleportation in the game. Well, there is, but for all intents and purposes, there actually isn't instantaneous teleportation. And so, if you want to travel from one end to the other part of the map, you actually have to ride your horse there, and that could take a really long time because why not? I guess. Um, I don't know. I think it's just an overall evolution of the MMORPG genre of it itself. I actually did see a comment earlier that I didn't get to respond to, um, saying that players just don't want to be hardcore that much anymore. Not like they used to. People just don't have time anymore. The MMO golden age or demographic that grew up on that stuff is just it's just not something that people are willing to do in terms of waiting, as you said earlier. And so I think companies are out there are doing it because they understand the shifting demographic, and so they'll cater towards the
Yeah.
demographic that's willing to shell out the money, which are people who are looking for convenience over
Hmm.
forming relationships.
Well,
And
you had mentioned last week, a couple weeks ago, about the fact that people who are younger don't even know what MMORPGs are. They're like, I
right,
mean, I know some do, but almost like, what are they? And they're like, they're not the same people anymore. I mean, we who used to play them aren't the same anymore. We have grown up too. We're also impatient because, well, obviously I was an adult during the time, but some people were actually in, younger or in college. They had all this time, and so they just raid, raid, raid. And now people are like, no, I don't have the time. I want Dungeon Finder. I want to get in and out. I want to play only content and get in and out. Younger people are like, oh, 140 characters for a tweet. I never get in and out of my dungeon.
right. No, that's actually a really good analogy. So yeah, I think gone are well, okay, let me put it this way. Even if there was an MMORPG that went the route of being really hardcore, like on the level of like WoW Classic, actual 2003, 2004. No, I'm not. Or yeah, around that period, it's going to be a super small niche. It's not going to be this game that's going to have everybody talking about it. It's just going to cater to a very small demographic, unfortunately, in my opinion. And excuse me. And I think the current popularity of certain games is evident of that. The most popular genre right now are battle royale first person shooters, right? And what are those? Those are quick games where you just jump in, get your stuff, kill people, and leave, and vice versa, and you just repeat the process. People just don't have the time to like really invest in their characters anymore, not on the level that we're used to, at least. And so everybody's standards are a bit different. Um, and yeah, either way, I tend to lean on the side of why not, like, give players more options than less options. And I know that comes at a cost because as we talked about earlier, and SirJahzeal said, there's a lot of community building when you don't have those features. But it's like, man, like, do you want to play with less people in community build, or have more people play the game because of its convenience and spend less time waiting? And I don't know what the balance is. I don't think anyone does actually know what the right balance is. It's just one of those things where you have to do a trial and error. But at the end of the day, yeah, I'd say put it in there because it's just like, why not? Unless of course you're Black Desert Online and there's a certain um, you know, uh look and feel that you're trying to go for. But other than that, like I said, that's just one game of many.
Yep. Well, it's interesting that you made the comment. It's like, balance. Maybe this is the balance. Maybe Dungeon Fighters are the balance for those who want to keep playing the game to what it was, do ahead and join guilds and join groups and do things together. And those who can't, do this. And so it does balance. Svato makes a comment. Seems like MMO games and players are very mixed these days, meaning so many MMOs which are making things pretty basic and simple. Because expect people to like that, fail most of the time, almost always. So games are not the same. Neither are the players. Perhaps MMO genre common ground is missing. Maybe. Like I said, I like what you said, Solomon. Demographics are changing.
Yeah, and I think exactly right. And I think the popularity of Valheim is evidence of that. It's not really an MMO, but there's still online capabilities like an MMO.
Yep.
And that game is, and one of the reasons why I find that, I'm sorry to say, one of the reasons why I find that game incredibly boring is because how simple it is. There just isn't enough complexity to that game, and I understand the attractiveness of a game like Valheim, but it's just, I mean, you just kind of gather stuff and you build your fort, and it's just like woohoo, like I just don't find the appeal to that. And again, this is coming from somebody who immensely enjoyed the settlement system of Fallout 4. I really want to play those type of games, but it's just, man, it's just, there's this, yeah, I think I just need a little bit more sophistication.
No, that's fair enough. And that's why I still talk about the fact that there's a variety of different games out there. For those who love the Rust, there are people like me who don't like Rust. And so having a different variety of things allows you to do that. You mentioned Eve, being very hardcore. Yeah. I mean, I have forgot that BDO didn't have any dungeons either. They're kind of a more hardcore too. So there's that thing. You get what you want. World of Warcraft, have their numbers up. So they're hitting some buttons right. I want to go back to another comment Sabato made. Also, do you remember when times were, he remembers times when he camped outside of Dungeon AFK, just waiting someone to come by. If someone did, you knew that, oh, that player's on the same quest as I, or at least have quests where I need to go as well. And when they saw you, they probably thought the same thing. It opens easy conversation, and it becomes even more special to feel you are not alone in this dark world. And finally, you see the other player who might actually help you. So yeah, well said, Sabato. Okay.
If I could add just
I mean,
I honestly can't remember which YouTuber it was. It's one of the bigger guys that cover games in the gaming industry, but he mentioned something. It was kind of specifically about World of Warcraft, but it could apply to some other MMOs, especially out of the big four. But he kind of he held his phone up, and he was like, what's stopping from games like World of Warcraft from just being getting rid of all those quests and stuff and just being having a launcher where you go in and you sit in the lobby and you just say, I want to go to this dungeon, or or you go to the pet battle section and you go, I want to pet battle PvP against other players, or things like that, and not even have all this other stuff, because he feels like that's where it's kind of going at this point. That the story's great and all, but really, that's what the game feels like to a lot of people. You get into looking for group or looking for raid or looking for pet battle or whatever. You are automatically linked with people of your own level, or eye level, or whatever leveling system is in the game, or armoring system is in the game to link you with other like leveled characters. You go in there, you don't talk to each other or anything. It's very almost like you could almost add bots in there if it couldn't find other players to play with you. You go, you run your thing, and then you go and you do it again. And so he was like, why don't they just have a lobby where you just go in? And it really has, in that essence, it's taken the humanity out of the MMO. That's great that there's all these other players in the game, but like he was saying, that you don't feel that connection with them anymore. they might as well be a bot, really. Like when you go in the dungeon or raid or whatever, because they're just people that you were just randomly tossed in with to go, run this dungeon or raid because you can't do it solo. And whereas you were making connections before, like Burning Crusade is going to do, thank God, really, and because you had to take note of the people that were good, that were knew their class and knew the fights and the mechanics, and you had to take note of the people that weren't so great to play with, or maybe they ninja looted something really special and you're like, hey, I'm not going to fall for that twice. That kind of stuff did happen. And um, it doesn't feel like, I admit, even World of Warcraft lately, well, for the last several years, really, I see people running around, but there's no connection to them. They don't feel immensely important to me anymore as they used to.
Some try. How often I have someone send me a party request, and I ignore it. I'm guilty of being that person who doesn't accept the quest or during the party because I'm like, I don't want to know you.
Yeah.
Kind of, and we're on the same server too. It's different when you're in a dungeon finder, but if you're out in the open world and all of a sudden you're doing the same quest together, and the person is actually at a party, and you say no because like, yeah, whatever,
See, I always, like Battle for Azeroth, like you would have those special quests that you would pick off the board or whatever to go out and kill some elite. That it was like, there's no way as a clothy I'm going to be able to take the damage off him. So I would just go and as I think it was Falto that said that. Yeah. I would go off and sit off to the side safely away from the mob, and I would wait, and then I would see someone else across the way, some warrior or shaman or somebody would come up, and I would see them stop, and you could tell that they're looking at the same mob, and I'd send them an invite, or I'd wait for them to invite me, and so I'm still holding it together, but I get why you wouldn't, but some of us are still doing it.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, it's funny. I think I call it unintended consequences. We're like, yes, oh my goodness, Dungeon Finder is great. Now I can jump to the dungeon I want to faster and get a group going to complete it. I don't have to worry about guild being ready or being available. But that also in turn starts pathing yourself toward, I don't need anybody else now anymore. So you're slow to get around it. I also made a comment. Funny enough, SirJahzeal said something like that. Solomon spoke about BDO. I have 620 hours of playtime in BDO. Never felt so alone in the MMO. But after a while, I got mindset for it that this is a single player game. Yeah, and that's how MMOs have turned out to some. It's a massive multiplayer online, and yet we're playing it solo. I remember I told a story before. I remember a guy in Dark Age of Camelot. We remember the story, like this person did the 50. The person had a goal to solo the 50 to see if it's possible. And the person did it. It took a while, but did it. And people were like, wow, I guess you can solo. The game wasn't meant to be a solo game. The game was meant to group up. And I think World of Warcraft was made the same way. It was meant to group up. It was meant to put people together. And now you have these games that are the massive multiplayer online presences, and yet they're solo games. My brother was playing World of Warcraft, Burning Crusade, when I realized that he was playing it. I go, well, why don't you do it in a group, right? He didn't want to because he wanted, the whole thing. Well, let's do it together. And so we started doing it together. And we built a guild out of it. And it was like he had finished playing it solo-wise, So he hadn't really tried the idea of the multiplayer aspect of it, and he finally did. He also was playing, was it Age of Conan, I think it was, at the same time. So I think Dungeon Finders can be, like you all said, it's a different dynamics, different player base we have nowadays. And I think people they're more moving on to doing faster things, but I think the game itself allows you to do the balance. It's us who aren't doing that balance. It's us who aren't making the friendship. Like I said, I get invited to a party. Back in the day, I would be so stacked by invited a party. I was like, hey, how's it going? I would just talk with the person as you know, what's happening with the, you know. Nowadays, I just like, I just ignore it, or I accept. We do the quest. Thank you very much. Off you go. Don't even say, hey, how's it going? You know. Oh well. There you go. That was our main story quest today.
Check out the further adventures of Kennethan by liking and subscribing and watching me live on twitch.tv/Kennethan.